Nagesh Rao and Syed. Okay. Alright guys, the few more people who are about to join, can we just wait for 2 more minutes before we start the session? Alright, Gupta, Venkat and Syed are here. Alright, great. Alright, from the session, I believe you've got the recorded session. Any questions before we actually start our session? Syed and Nageshwar, I've unmuted you.
Hi, we didn't get the recording, sir. Syed and Gopal and Venkat also.
Okay.
Oh, I got.
So, I think you don't have Gopal and myself's email ID.
Okay, did Venkat get it?
Yeah, I got it. I will forward this.
Yeah,
Right?
either you share it with them or just send that email across to Ravi. He'll share it with all of you.
Yeah.
We can type our email ID, but yeah, we can continue with the training.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could go ahead and type in the email ID on the chat. I'll have that at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, Manan.
Hi. Hi.
Let's go and start the session. There are a few more people who will be joining,
Uh-huh.
but let's go and start the session. Any questions from what we've done yesterday? Did you get the recorded session?
Yeah, I did get the recorded session.
Did you have time to go and look through that once?
No, I attended the session as well yesterday, so
Okay, sure.
I didn't look
So
through it again.
any questions?
No, it was clear actually.
Alright, great. Alright guys, so you have any questions, you could go ahead and raise your hand or you can type it in the chat message. I'll be able to understand. Let's go and look at the BW 7.4 system. We tried to look through and see how the navigation of how the functional areas are arranged in BW 7.4 yesterday. We looked at the interface for HANA Studio. We looked at very high level as to what are the basic folders that are there in the HANA Studio. But today what we will be looking at is trying to understand and creating the objects in the BW system, BW 7.4. So I'm going to click on it. So here we're going to do a login. Here once you register you will have your username, password through which you will be able to log into the system. Okay, I'm going to click on give my password. So here you'll be in the SAP Easy Access. I told you yesterday that this is called the context menu and you have to go ahead and type in a transaction code there. And majority of times the transaction code that is used in the BW environment is RSA 1. Alright, so go ahead and type that in there. That will bring you to the info provider menu or into the modeling session. This is the data warehousing workbench. This area that you have, all of it together, is called as the data warehousing workbench. Under the data warehousing workbench, you are right now in the modeling section. Okay. So yesterday I told you that each of these diamonds that you see is more like a namespace that you create for yourself. It's called as an info area. So let's start trying to understand. The strategy that we're going to use to learn BW and HANA together is we get an idea about BW, and then we learn about HANA, and then we'll be looking at BW on top of HANA. And wherever it is necessary that we will be referring between BW and HANA, I'll be talking about both of these areas, all right? So this is the screen that opens up for you, and you will be in this area when you are trying to log into the BW environment. What we will be looking at here is if you right click on the info provider, what you find here is create info area. Okay, this will happen only if you are in the modeling section. So create info area is what you will be clicking. So it's a space that you're creating, a namespace that you're creating for yourself to organize your data. I'm typing in a name, alright? You can go ahead and give something like, just give me one moment. Sorry about that, guys. Alright, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to give in the name or the technical name of the info area. Before we get to this, I'll talk to you a little about the naming convention that we'll be using. Alright. Now in the background, if you see, there are a lot of objects in here, and you will find some of them starting with Z, some of them starting with 0. You will have some of them basically starting with BW and all this. Now the standard way of how SAP registers its objects is that it will be starting with 0 in the front. Okay, the first letter of the object will be starting with a 0. The moment you see that, you can understand that it is an SAP created or an SAP generated object. Marketplace, 0 marketplace, 0 cross application component, 0 CRM. If you go into that, you will have usually other objects under it. So under cross application components, you have cross content indicator, 0 CI, consolidated info providers. You drop it down, you might have further objects, and all of these objects will start with 0 in the front. Okay, whenever you find an object with 0 in the front, it's an SAP delivered object. And where do you get these objects from? From the business content. Okay, so if you have an object other than 0, then it means it is a customer created object. Alright, so here the best practice that we will use is you go ahead and use the naming convention of either Y or Z. Okay, start your objects with either Y or Z. Okay, Y or Z. Okay, always use this as the starting object for your naming convention. This will enable you so that you will have the distinction between customer created and normal created objects. Okay. So here what we will do is we will right click on the info provider. It's always better if we stick on to the standard naming convention. Right click on the info area and say create info area. So what we will do is we'll create an info area as the info area underscore BW HANA. Okay. This is the description that I want to give, and all that I'm doing is click on create. And when I click on create, what happens? It gets created at the bottom of the list. So you'll find this here, info area for BW on HANA training. And this is the naming convention, ZIA underscore BW underscore HANA. So this is going to be the technical name. The moment I create this here, you will find that this same info area will also be created in the info objects menu. If you go all the way down, you find this here, it's created here. If you go into the open up destination at the bottom, you will find the same info area for BW on HANA training as well. So this is the advantage. So the reason why it is creating it in this fashion is it is going to link these sub headings, alright, or these info provider and info objects are these sub areas in which we create individual objects, and the way we link them is through the info area. You will see that as we go along. So in the info provider menu is where you mainly create the info area. Once you go ahead and create the info area here, the next step is we want to go ahead and create the smallest objects within BW, and I told you that these are called as info objects. Okay. Now if I go in, so if you go into a computer, what you will find is usually it is partitioned as C drive and D drive and all that, right? And in C drive usually there is my documents, there'll be my pictures, you will have my videos and all that. Why do you have all of this? Is because basically you're segregating data based on its kind of distinction, right? So you will put all your documents under my documents, your my pictures, your downloads will go automatically into downloads. Alright, so here you have first level is info area, okay, that you create, which is basically the space that you create for holding all your objects together. Info area. Once you have your info area, the next thing is you want to create smaller objects like your characteristics and key figures. Okay. For holding all the characteristics, alright, these all fall under the info objects menu. But you have majorly two distinctions. One is characteristics and one is key figures. We don't want to confuse these as well, so we want to have individual folders for characteristics and key figures. So a naming convention called as catalogs for characteristics and catalogs for key figures are created separately. These are nothing but folders. The naming is called as catalogs. So in the catalog for characteristics, you will only have characteristic values. And in the catalog for key figures, you can only create key figures. But basically, we need to understand what are characteristics and what are key figures before we go in to create all of these. Now, when I'm looking at trying to understand characteristics, so let's say I have a small table, a transaction data table that I've got. I have a customer C1 who has bought a material M1 and who's paid Each of these material is $10 and he's bought 3 of them. So the total amount is $30. Okay. So like this I might have a few records in here. And based on that you will have data that will be here. Okay. Now this is the unit price, this is the quantity, and this is the amount. Okay. So if I'm looking at it, if I know the cost price, it is straight away what I'll understand whether I'm making profits or whether I'm making losses. But that is not the only thing that we will be looking at when you're trying to look at the data. You will have to look for whether the transaction that happened, is it a real transaction? Is customer C1 your actual customer? M1, is it actually the material that you have in your store? Or is it something by mistake somebody typed in a transaction has happened? Or if it's a wrong transaction. So first your integrity of the data should be checked. Then the characteristics, these C1 and M1, which are alphanumeric values, allow you to actually look at your data from different perspectives. Okay, you can look at which kind of customers are buying what kind of materials. Okay, and what is the usual amount that is consumed. Let's say even if you have dates, then you will know that during a particular season what kind of materials that you will buy. Alright, what is the market product that a lot of people are using? So you will have an advantage about how much quantity of that product needs to be created. Let's say you are in the Christmas season and you know that there's a specific product that is going very well. Alright, so let's say it's a bakery and you have a lot of plum cakes or something. So you will have an idea that, okay, customers are buying a particular product. So you are able to analyze the data. To analyze the data, you will always require the characteristic values, or you can call these as master data values. Okay, your customer, your material, your vendor numbers, your business areas, company codes, these are all alphanumeric values, and they will allow you to go ahead and analyze your data. The basis on which we analyze the data, that is called as the characteristic. It could be customer, it could be material, it could be profit center, or anything. The numeric values of where all our analysis is, what we are actually analyzing. So this could be amount, alright? Okay, so we are trying to analyze the amount. What we are actually trying to analyze is called as your key figure, and in very short you can call them as all the numeric values fall into the key figure. Okay, if you're already having some warehousing knowledge, you have the basic as dimensions and measures. Okay, dimensions are defined as characteristics, measures are defined as key figures. Okay, what we are trying to analyze is what you have here. So let's go and take a look at that data. So here, characteristics and key figures. So catalogs are basically the folder that holds all your characters together. Catalogs for key figures hold all your key figures in this particular folder. You cannot create key figures in the catalog for characteristics. You cannot create characteristics in the catalog for key figures. So this is a way of how you can organize the objects that you can create. So if I go in here and if I go under the info objects menu, I find my info area here. If I right click on it, you have the option for creating info object catalog. The info object catalog, when I click on it, gives me two options, where I can create characteristic info object or if I can create key figure info object. I'm selecting a characteristic info object and I'm mentioning this here saying Z. Majority of times the naming of the technical names of these objects are between the range of 3 to 8. Alright, 3 characters to 8 or sometimes 9 characters. Something like info area doesn't really have a specific range, but usually the other objects like your catalogs and your key figures or your characteristic naming convention, you can give it between 3 to 8 characters. Okay, so here I am giving the name as Z info object catalog underscore HANA training underscore char. Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'm going to call this as catalog for characteristics. Okay, I'm going to click on create. Remember that within BW or within SAP, any object that you create, if you want to use it, you have to activate that object. Activation is a process of checking for syntaxes and actually creating an object in there, and this is usually the icon that you use for activation. This is a matchstick, so if you click on it, it will activate, it will check through all the objects, it will create if there is underlying tables that need to be created, and you will find the actual object being created. If you don't activate, your object will not be created for you to go ahead and use it. So here I have created the catalog for characteristics. This is just a folder. So here I have this, the symbol that you find is a triangle. In the background there is a grid. Okay. In a similar fashion, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say create info object catalog. I'm selecting key figures now. I call this as Z info object catalog underscore HANA key figures. Call this as catalog for key figures. I'm going to click on create. All that I will do is just click on the activate button. The very next button to the activate button is the check button. So even before you do the activation, you can click on the check. So it will tell you whether it is consistent or no. So if it is consistent, it means that you could go ahead and create. So if I click on activate now, so it will go ahead and activate this whole thing, and this will be available for you. So the key figure will have the grid in the foreground, and in the background you will have the triangle. Okay. Now these are two folders or two subfolders to the main folder, which is the info area. Okay. Now if I right click on the catalog for characteristics, the system will allow me to create info objects here. So if I click on create info object, you will find that the characteristic value can be created. So let's say I will create a character something like Z product. I'm going to call this, you can call it product number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Product number. I say continue. So it's going to create an info object, a characteristic info object. So let's say I'm not saving this. Okay, I'll go through that again. Right click on the characteristic and say create info object. Because I've clicked on the characteristic catalog, so I will have the option to create the characteristic value. If I go on to the key figures and if I say create an info object, it will automatically create a key figure object. Alright. So based on the folder, you will have the objects to be created. So this will ensure that I can never create a key figure object in my characteristic and never a characteristic in my key figure. So I right click on the characteristic and I say create info object. So there is characteristic, long description, reference characteristic and template. Okay. So when you want to create a new characteristic value, you could use the technical name that you can define. If you want to use either an existing value, you want to copy those here, you can use a reference characteristic or a template. Alright. So here I'm going to use a new characteristic. So I'm going to call this as Z product number. I'll give the description as product number, and I'm going to click on continue. So when I click on continue, the system will take me to this screen. This entire screen is the process of creating an info object of type characteristic. Okay. There will be different areas that will be involved with, so you have multiple tabs that are available. Though we talk about it as a field in reference to a table, that it is more like a field that you have, but what you will be understanding is it has much more functionality than just being a field. To create an info object, in the background there will be multiple tables that will be created, and each of these has a purpose. Okay. The general tab that you see here is basically where we create the object. So here itself there are two divisions, one which says data element and data type and all this. On the other side it says other, and you have an option which says attribute only. Now if you look at a basic shop floor, so what you have, if you go into a shop floor, you will find, what is the most generic stuff that you see there? You'll find a lot of customers, you'll find a lot of products, you'll find a lot of people who will be helping, salespeople. Alright, and majority of the time this is what you'll find. You'll find a lot of advertisements and all that. And then the rest of it is you go and buy a product and you will have to take it to the till, they'll bill it for you. But if you look at the product, all of them together are categorized as product, but each product there will be different kinds of products. You have the men's section, you have the women's section in each category. Alright, you have trousers, you have shorts, shirts, t-shirts, and a lot of things. Similarly, women will have their own stuff. Alright, and there are basically these under again trousers and all that, you will again have based on the size, you will have again categories. Now when I give a generic term as a product, okay, I could give a product number, but let's say I give some M001, which is basically trousers. Okay, but apart from the trousers, there will be more stuff that I will get information from the trousers, or if there are other objects that could give a little more information, like trousers. Basically, at the other smaller objects that will give information will be color, size, type. When I say type, it could be either is it a straight leg, or if it's a so body fits, or you can mention any type. So all of these will give a little more information about my actual trouser. Okay, if you are talking about a customer region, customer location, customer city, that will give a little more information about the customer. Why will we need that? When we're trying to analyze data, you might want that information. Okay, but the main object that you're creating is either the material or the customer. But the remaining stuff, which is like the color, size, and type for material, for customers, the customer region and the customer location, customer name, so that information will be basically the other stuff that will give more information about my customer. Later on, I want to go and analyze who are all my customers from the north region. So I'd be able to segregate based on that. So the objects that will give you a little more information about my actual customers, these are called as attributes. Okay. Within the info objects, there are characteristics, right? So you basically have characteristic info object. Under characteristic info objects, again you have main info objects and main info objects. And then you have attribute info objects. Okay. Main info objects are the ones that you will be representing on the reporting level, where you can do drill down and drill across and all of that. Attribute info objects are basically that will give you more information about the main info objects. They'll always follow the main info objects, but the way you create both of them are pretty much the same. Okay. The only difference is when you create an object as an info object, if you want to use it always as the main info object, you will just not allow it or create or select the attribute value. But if you want to use it only as an attribute, wherever you use it, if you want to create it only as an attribute, you will select this option. Okay. So that is all the difference that is. So we'll learn about it as we go along. Okay. Don't get confused by all this theory right now. Now the main info objects that you create, if you see, I'm creating Z product underscore number, product number. The data type is, when you create a characteristic info object, the data type is of 4 types. Character string, which is char, num, which is characteristic string with only digits, date, and times. So if your object is of this type, you can go and select. I am creating characteristic string right now. You need to define the length of that object as well. So let's say this is a 10 digit. The system basically understands alphabets with uppercase easily than alphabets with lowercase. So in case you have data that is coming in lowercase, it is better that you select this option which says lowercase letters. If not, then you can just leave it as is. Another thing is you have something called as a conversion routine. Here you have alpha. So I've given my material number as 10, but the actual number that is coming is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so this is a 5-digit number. So my standard is 10 digit, but the data that is coming is only 5 digit. So to bring everything under the same standard, you have conversion routines. Here we have the type of conversion is alpha conversion. What alpha conversion does is, if the length is 10 digit and your actual value is 5 digit, it will prefix zeros in the front. Alright, so 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is the value that will go into the system. Okay, so the system basically does that part of it as well. So this is the first screen that you have in the general tab. Okay, and here you will have an SID table information also. If you guys are from a little background of warehousing, what you usually have is when you're storing an alphanumeric value, like what we have a product number, let's say is P001 or P or M001, you will have it aligned with a numeric, so that when you're using it for analysis, the system is able to process numbers faster than alphanumerics. Alright, so the system understands numbers, so there is a table that basically converts it from an alphabet or alphanumeric value to a numeric value. So that is nothing but your SID table. We'll talk about this concept a couple of days from now when we talk about extended star schema. How this SID table basically helps you to link other objects. But the basic understanding of an SID table is, for every object or for every value that load into your characteristic value, you will have a numeric value that will be created. Alright, so let's say you create C001 as a customer number. in the background, the system will identify it by a number 1. Instead of C001, wherever if it refers C001, it will use the number 1 so that the system can process numerics faster. Okay, you don't have to do anything about it. The system will automatically create all these objects. It will only link all of these objects, so you don't really have to do anything relating to it. So the SID table is here. The next tab that you find here, so this is basically the general tab. All that you need to do is just enter the length, and if you say activate right now, it will create the info object. But there are other tabs also within the creation of the info object. Let me just walk you through what each of these tabs are. The second tab that you see here is basically Business Explorer. We've talked about Business Explorer in our demo session, where Business Explorer basically means the reporting environment. Alright, on top of BW you have a presentation layer. The proprietary presentation layer that you have within BW is called as Business Explorer, or in short BEX. How do you want to go and look at this particular info object that you create, product number? Do you want to see its text, which is long description or short description, or do you want to see its value, or do you want to see both text and the value, or how do you want to go and look at your data? Alright, so all of this information can be handled in the Business Explorer tab. So everything that you see here is relating to how it is shown to the end user. The end user looks at your data only using a report, and that is the BEX report. So in that scenario, you will find that the Business Explorer can be looked at. Okay. The third tab that you have here is either master data or text. Now here, by default, both of these tabs are checked, and the system understands that for every object that you create, you will need a text value. Okay, so the tables that will be created will be of the naming convention /BIC /M for master data, P for the value table, T for text table, S for SID table, H for hierarchy tables. So the naming is like this. When you create an object which is a customized object and not an SAP object, the naming convention for the object will be /BIC /BIC, let's say you're looking at the value part, then it will be P, and what you have created is Z product underscore number. If you're looking at let's say text table, it will be /BIC /T Z product underscore number. And likewise, if you're using the SID table, instead of T it will have S. If you're using hierarchy, it will have H. The naming convention is like this. The reason is because you have created an object ZPR underscore number. This is your info object, right? So the naming will be like this. If it's an SAP delivered object, you will find it will start with 0 product. Right? In this scenario, the table will be of the format /BI BI0 /P0 PRCT /BI So your naming convention is a little different when you're using it as an SAP delivered object and as a customized object. So remember these changes. Whenever we create an object, start with a Z. That is always a better way to distinguish between SAP's generated objects and customized objects. So here there will be a text. So let's say you have a customer number. You also want to give a description for that. C001 doesn't mean anything to us. Alright. So we'll know it is only a customer, but what kind of customer? Is he a loyal customer or is he a one-time customer? Based on how you want to define a customer, you can go ahead and give the description. Alright. So for objects that need description, by default it usually creates a description. So you will have to load the description separately, the value separately. Okay, we'll come to that a little later on, but remember that there is also a description part that you need to enter. The fourth tab that you have is called as the hierarchy tab. Now if you look at an enterprise, you will have a lot of different hierarchies that you will want to maintain. Not every object will need a hierarchy, but some of the objects will need hierarchies. Like let's say you have cost centers. Okay. If you look at, let's say you are working in an enterprise, all of you are software professionals. So when you go to the office, you will find that there are different places where costs will be incurred. Okay. So if you take a small portion, just like a canteen that you have, you will find that you will have sub shops that will be there that will be providing you food. Alright, it could be something like a Subway that you have there, or you might have biryani, or you might have some fruit shop, fruit salad. So each of these are basically from the canteen, and they will incur their own costs to buy their raw materials. This is first level of costs that will be incurred, and on the whole the canteen will incur these costs. Alright, so this is the main object that will be hit with all the costs, but it will be subdivided into smaller sections, and these again will have smaller costs again for raw materials and all of these. Alright, so here there is a hierarchy in how costs are incurred, and you can go and accumulate all of them to give you the entire amount. Okay, so you have cost center hierarchies, you have profit center hierarchies, you might have material hierarchies, customer hierarchies. Again, depends on whether you need a hierarchy or whether you don't. If you want to use a hierarchy, all that you need to do is click on the tab which says with hierarchies, and the entire thing will be enabled. Do you want a standard hierarchy, or do you have your own implementation of how you want to use a hierarchy? Is it a time dependent hierarchy or time independent hierarchy? All of that you can go ahead and select here itself if you want to maintain external hierarchies. Alright. So the naming convention of the hierarchy tables will be /BIC/H and the product number. Okay. Then you have the actual tab which says attributes. I told you about material number, and for a material you have multiple attributes that you have: color, size, and type. Okay. In this scenario, what you have is these are all the attributes, but each of these attributes has to be created as an info object only. Main info object, attribute info object. If you create it as a main info object also, you can use it as an attribute, but we need to create them as an info object first. Once you create them as an info object, you can use them as an attribute. Here you can directly mention that. So whenever you find the product number, automatically right behind the product number you will have the product type, the product color, and the product size. So you don't have to specifically go into that and search for it. The system automatically brings these values. Okay. Only problem is the attributes will not have drill down and drill across operations at the reporting level, which is in the BEX level. And then you have the last tab which is called as compounding. A compounding is a scenario where a particular info object, let's say a plant, you have two company codes within your enterprise. Okay, company code, and each company code has a plant which provides or which basically manufactures the product. Okay, and let's say both of these company codes have the same plant and they're generating the same product, but you will have to account for individual company code and the plant that it is being used. So the plant gets its identity only by mentioning a superior info object like the company code number. If the company code number is maintained, then the plant gets its identity. So in a scenario where you can go and use the product number to link it with another main or bigger info object, you will use compounding tab. It is usually not used, but you need to know that there is an option like this. Okay, so general, business explorer, mass data text, hierarchy, attributes, and compounding. So we have not entered anything in all of these tabs. We have just gone into the general tab and added the length and the data type. Once you have entered all of this, all that you need to do is just check for it. It says characteristic OK, and then the next tab that you're going to do is just go and click on the activate button. When you click on the activate button, you will find that in the bottom there are a few stuff that is happening, and it will finally say info object is activated. And when you see this green light, it means that it is activated. And so you will find that right under the catalog for characteristics, you have a product number that is created. Okay. Now we go and right click on the catalog. So that's how you create a characteristic info object. It's very simple and straight. Let's say you are creating a create info object, and let's say you're creating a Z. Customer underscore number. Let's say create, continue. So it says that it's already existing. Let's say this customer number, all that you need to do is give it as a character string, mention the length, and you could just say activate. You have the customer number created. Just like how you create a field. Once you do that, now let's say I want to go ahead and create a key figure. A key figure is what? Identical to a measure, right? So I right click on the catalog, the folder for key figures, and then I click on create info object. So when I click on create info object, this will allow me to create, let's say Z, let's say price. Click on continue. So when you're creating a price info object of type key figure, the data types are a little different from what you have in the characteristics. So here you have amount. You want to create it as a number, or you want to create it as a date. You want to create it as a quantity, integer, or time. At the bottom, you will find also two more tabs which says, let's say you're creating it as a price and the data type is amount. So in the amount, based on whether you want to do your transaction in one currency or multiple currency, basically accounting to whether your business is across one geographical location or is it spread across multiple countries where you would have transactions happening in different currencies. Based on that, you can mention you want to use a fixed currency or a unit currency. If you're saying a fixed currency, let's say you say USD, it means that all your transactions happen only in US dollars. Okay. If it is not that way, your company is present, it has its presence in India, it has its presence in US, it has its presence in Britain, and all of these. In that scenario, what you could do is you can create a unit currency called as zero currency. So what zero currency does is, after you give the number, the amount, so let's say it's 300, after that you can give the currency name. If it is dollars, you can say USD. If it is in rupees, you could say INR. If it is in pounds, you can say GBP. So based on how you want to express the currency, you could go ahead and give a currency. Later on, you can go and do a conversion from all of these currencies. You can convert it into one single currency when you're handling your statements, your financial statements, like your end of the year statements. You can go ahead and do your conversions based on the conversion rate at that point. Alright, so this is what you have when you're creating a key figure or a measure. Okay, zero currency. You can go ahead and give a fixed currency or a unit currency. So I click on aggregation. How do you want to go ahead and use this particular field? Let's say price. So each customer, whenever he buys a product, there will be a price that will be incurred, there will be amount and all of this. So how do you want the price to be acting? So you have 10, 20, 30 is the price. Then automatically, if you want to accumulate, you will know that the total amount is 10 plus 20 plus 30, that is 60. So that is where you are accumulating the values. By default, the values that are created for price as an amount is cumulative types. But if you create something like stock, which is opening stock, closing stock, when you're talking about inventory, you cannot go and accumulate stock. So yesterday I had 30 pieces, today I have 50 pieces. Doesn't mean total I have 80 pieces, right? Between yesterday and today I have created an additional 20 pieces, but I'm defining my stock. In those scenarios, I don't want to add all my values, but I want to leave them as non-cumulative. So in those scenarios, I can use the non-cumulative values as well. So when you see aggregation is a scenario where you want to leave, or you want to pick up, or you want to add the objects. You can pick up the maximum value if there are multiple ways. You can pick up the minimum, or you can have no aggregation. All of these are available here. In the additional properties, you want to see how you want to look at these values at the reporting layer. In the characteristic, when we're creating the characteristic info object, the second tab that we saw was Business Explorer. In a similar scenario, the key figures within the reporting section on the key figures is called as additional properties, and here you have how you want your object to be seen. The decimal values, do you want them to be a single, how you want the decimal places, how do you want to display the values in tens or thousands or 10,000s, how you should set up the decimals and commas and all of this. How do you want to look at the description? So the precision and all of these can be defined here. How many decimal places should be there after the value? So stuff like that can be handled. See, all of these properties that you have for reporting will be also present at the reporting layer itself. But if you want to control it straight from here, then you can mention these values in here, right? But these values can be controlled from the reporting layer also. Okay, so once I go ahead and create this, I'll go and create activate, and the object is activated, and you'll see price being created here as an info object. Alright, so let's say we create one more, create info object, key figure. Quantity. So here quantity, you can select quantity, and you would want to give either a fixed unit of measure. Let's say Here we usually measure a particular thing in, let's say, kilograms, but you want to measure it in pounds, all right? Or here we call, usually our measuring is liters. In, let's say, in another location it is gallons, okay? So depending on how you want your unit to be, if it's a fixed unit or you want to go ahead and give a unit reference unit which is like 0 unit, so you can go ahead and select this and then later do the conversion. Okay, I'm going to click on activate. Just going to create quantity. Alright, so I've created 2 characteristic info objects and I've created 2 key figure info objects. So at any point of time, anything that you did not understand, you could ask me now. Syed, Nageswar Rao, Manan, any questions? I've unmuted the microphone for all of you.
We are good, I think.
Yeah. Alright, so have all of you got the server access?
No, not yet.
Nothing yet.
Okay. Alright, so any idea if you'd get it today?
No news so far.
No news from the, what's his name, Mahesh? We'll call him.
Okay. Yeah. So just speak to Mahesh, and then if you've registered, usually he'll immediately give the server access so that we can start doing exercises. Alright? So
Okay.
I don't want you guys to fall back on what we are teaching. So I'll tell Mahesh as well about the server access. Okay. So any questions for today?
No, actually we are good. It was really nice.
Alright, so guys, any feedback whether if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow, are you able to follow what we are teaching? Is my language fine?
It's a good, I think it's a good pace. We like
Okay,
it.
great. Great. Manan and Nageswara, any comments, any questions that you guys have? I'm not able to unmute you guys. Just give me one second.
Okay,
If you can type, if you have any feedback or if you are able to follow, that'll be great. All right. So if you've registered, they'll be giving you the server access so that we can start going and doing exercises on it. All right. We have quite a lot to cover, so it'll be nice if we can get the access fast because we can go through our regular sessions. Okay.
Okay. And can you send us the content, the one you were saying yesterday, like the flow of teaching?
Sure, I will send it across. Yeah. What we will be doing for individual classes also, I'll be giving you a little ahead as well so that you can go ahead and look at information about it.
Okay.
Tomorrow what we're going to look at basically is how to load the data into these objects. Okay, how to load data into your info objects of type characteristics. Okay, that is what we will be covering in tomorrow's session. We will see how to load it from a CSV file into the BW environment. So it will bring in a lot of things about how the data flow of loading the data into a BW system works. Okay, that will be a standard method across whether you're loading data to info objects or info cubes or DSOs or anything. So these fundamentals are very important. I want you guys to concentrate and then look at what we'd be doing and practice it so that it becomes simpler as we go through. Okay, because here we'll be doing one process. Later on with HANA there will be another way of how you'll be doing it. So if you're thorough with whatever we're doing right now, The rest of it we can look at. All right. All right, guys. So I won't keep you for long. If you have any questions, make sure you can contact Mahesh or you can contact me, and then we'd be able to give you any kind of solution that you require within BW and HANA.
All right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's good.
All right, so there is a question from Nageshwar Rao. Please give some info about your background and experience. All right, I have over 12 years of experience on the SAP front. I worked in the areas from BW 3.5, 7.2, 7.1, 7.3, and 7.4. I've worked I work with clients across US, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I am employed with an MNC. That's my permanent role, but I also do a lot of freelancing and trainings as well. I worked on data services, business objects data services, version 3.2, 4.2, 4.1, and 4.2. I worked in the areas of HANA with service pack 6, 7, and 8, but I have a clear idea about the previous service packs as well. Right. So I have an idea with business objects as well, but I am not more of a core reporting guy. My strengths are modeling and ETL. That is my core strength, but I handle reporting based on my requirements as well. Okay. I worked on SAP process integration as well, another middleware tool from SAP. So, I mean, in these areas, if you have any kind of questions, I'd be always willing to help you or answer these questions for you. All right. So that's a little overview or introduction about me. So I hope to see you guys more often, and our interaction will be a little more during these sessions. You'll have a lot of homework to do as well. All right. So once we get the server access for all of you, then I'll be loading you with quite some exercises. All right. So for today, basically, if you have time, just go through this video once again so that you have the understanding about info objects and how to create them. All right. All right, guys. So take care. Have a nice evening. See you around tomorrow at the same time. Bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.
अच्छा इसको कॉल करो
सुबह करें